Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, channel devoted to the love of board gaming. Today we're doing another Whachacha's Wargaming journey. I'm dipping my toe into the Middle-earth strategy battle game. So this is going to be just me figuring out where how I'm gonna dive in. Okay, so this series is supposed to be a three-pronged approach, which is to learn, to play, and to craft. And now I'm finding myself, and this is supposed to be about World War II. That was my chosen, setting. And then I was going to be playing with Flames of War. That was my chosen game for the whole thing. But some things got kind of like switched around, and life happened for about a year, and I kind of got away from it a little bit. And I'm still very eager to continue that journey. But I am going to take a little sidebar, and I'm going to try. I'm going to dip my toe into the Middle-earth strategy battle game. Now, a couple things to talk about before we get really into that, and that is that I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings, massive Lord of the Rings fan. Okay, and I love the books, absolutely love them, read them, listened to them dozens of times, at least a lot, and the films are among my favorite films of all time. The Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King. You know, I watched hundreds of movies a year, and those two movies are still two of the best movies I've ever seen. I absolutely love them. Return of the King basically can bring me to tears. So I'm kind of coming at this from a little bit of a mixed approach, because there are strengths about the books over the movies, but then there are also we have the visuals of Peter Jackson's wonderful trilogy. And Games Workshop has taken they have the license for the films, and also they do draw from the books and things, because they have other characters and things that were not in the films, but mainly their visuals come from the films. So I'm going to try to stick more to the books, because that's what I want. And I'm gonna try to, but I do love the look of the miniatures and things like that. Now, for me, Games Workshop is a bit of a mixed bag. Incredible looking miniatures, stunning. I mean, and I believe people play Warhammer because people play Warhammer. It's so prevalent. Same thing with Magic. The Magic the Gathering is an incredibly designed game. I don't really get into it anymore. I did one time. I was very into it, but I think that part of its success is that it is so successful. I mean, people like to play a game that is active. People don't play Rune Wars, the miniature game, because nobody plays Rune. They can't find a partner or whatever. So I think that Games Workshop, they've gotten more and more money, and they're huge. D&D, Magic, and Warhammer are bigger than they've ever been, and they're really juggernauts. But I think that Games Workshop, their game design is not up to the snuff of their visuals. So I'm oftentimes not that interested in, learning, because I've learned before. There's a lot of things that that I'm a stickler for, where I'm like, that I don't believe they do there that are good game practices. Like if I were reviewing a board game, I would ding them on a lot of stuff. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that side of it. But what I have heard about this game is that it's the best. A lot of people swear by it and say it's the best thing that Games Workshop does, and that it's really a really great game. So right off the bat, I will be playing this game solo, speaking as a kind of a, pivot from talking about the idea that people play the games. And I'm going to come with my same passion, where I'm gonna try to recreate scenes from the films. I was really excited. Now, I did already purchase the rulebook and the Armies of Middle-earth, which are the two books, the Armies of Lord of the Rings, which are the two books that you need. The one is the rules, of course you need the rules, and the other one has the stats of all the units in that for the Lord of the Rings. There is a Hobbit side of it. Those films didn't resonate with me as much, to say the least. I do really love the book, and I'm interested in buying some of those and dipping into a few of that stuff, but mainly, I just got the Armies of Lord of the Rings book. Now, as with any any war game, you think the best thing to do any kind of time you start a game like this that is not collectible, but a living game that continues. I talked this before about the Flames of War and stuff. You really need to get the starter box. And that's what I got to get the rule book, because it was about $200, but the rulebook itself is like $60, so that's $140. And then I think anytime you buy something like that, the value is better because they want you to get into the game. So I purchased the Assault on Osgiliath box set as I've just grabbed it from off camera. And so this has some terrain in here, which is pretty cool. It's Osgiliath. Now, they had a different box set to intro the game, and I really wish I had gotten that one because it hits a lot more of the notes that I want. Faramir is not nearly as good in the movies as he's one of the characters. There's a few characters that really suffer in the films, and he's one of them. But this is fine. It's a fine product. I mean, it has you get some Minas Tirith soldiers, you get some Gondorian rangers, and you get you get some orcs, right? And you got Gothmog, who I love. I absolutely love Gothmog. So the previous one of this was this is like a Mooncast Shadow. The other one had Ring Wraith on a wing, on a fell beast, and then you got Theoden King, and you have Rohan, and so you have, and the Army of the Dead is in the box and stuff like that. So that's pretty amazing. So, but this is the one that's available. The other one's out of print. I looked up and I was like, oh, there's one for $150. Just the box, $150. Not quite sure who's buying that, but I got that, and then I got starter armies for each of the factions. And again, they're a little more reasonable, but each of them, there's 4 battle hosts, they call them, and there's one for Isengard, one for Mordor, one for Minas Tirith, and one for Rohan. And each of them comes with a hero, and they'll come mounted, and so they'll come on horseback as well as not on horseback. This has got Grima Wormtongue. Love Grima Wormtongue. As an aside, in this game, it's unbelievable to me, his character in this, you pay the point cost for him, and in a war game, you get a certain amount of points, and then you can decide how you're going to spend them, on a lot of not so good units, or a few really good units, or some kind of mix order. But you field Grima on the enemy's team. It's such a thematic win. I love it, absolutely. Anyway, so there's 4 of these. This one has Saruman and Grima, mounted and unmounted, as well as a bunch of Uruk-hai warriors, and there's kind of an assortment. And then, the Mordor has the Witch King of Angmar. Love him. And you also get the Gandalf riding with Pippin, with the Minas Tirith force, and then you get Éomer with the Rohan soldiers. So I got all those 4 battle host boxes, as well as that starter set that I said in the Armies of Middle-earth book. So now I've got to decide, now that I've got a good, kind of a kernel to my army, that works on multiple levels. Essentially, I am ready to figure out, how I'm going to, how further I'm going to get into this. And of course, that's a lot of money to have spent on this hobby. And of course, I'm going to spend a little bit more to get it actually the way I really want it to. So, ippy. Okay, so I think I started talking about the Battle Companies book. I might have mentioned that in this long rambling bit here. Battle Companies is a really amazing sounding thing, which is a book that will allow you to play these skirmish level matches. And this is really skirmish anyway. You can play it a non-skirmish. It's really built for skirmish. And the Battle Companies thing kind of makes it a little campaign where your heroes and you take 6 or 8 figures or whatever, and then things happen to them. They get injured, they get stronger, they get, there's all these rules. But I read up on this a little bit, and wow, this is what I absolutely hate about Games Workshop, in that it doesn't seem like it's been play tested really. Your one character can get amazingly strong, and it seems like everything's all over the map, and you're rolling for all these things. Now, I would have preferred it if you were leveling your people up between, because that's essentially what you're doing. But sometimes you get detriments, sometimes you get benefits. But I would have really loved to see that if you were able to, spend points and pick things or whatever. But that's the gamer part of me. I really love, that's what I love about gaming, is making these decisions. And it seems a bit random, and it seems a little bit willy-nilly. And I read up on a bunch of different people's opinions of it. And people think oh, that's so fun and it's amazing, but it's also completely bonkersly, all over the map type rules and stuff. So that's not for me personally. So I'm going to pass on that. And then I also read some reviews and looked into a little bit the Quest of the Ring Bearer, which seems like it would be perfect for me to play, since I'm interested in sort of recreating these scenes. Ultimately I'd like to, build terrain and paint the models and things and reenact some of my favorite scenes. And that's what I'm going to kind of do today. in the second half of this video. So the Quest of the Ring Bearer has these campaign scenarios. Now you can find some of the different scenarios in different books. There's a number of books. I'm not buying a bunch of $60 books. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the essence of some of these. Some of them I'll follow the scenario rules as they're depicted, in the books I have available to me. But I did read some reviews on the Quest of the Ring Bearer, and some of the scenarios people were talking about how like they weren't that well. Again, another symptom of what I believe Games Workshop is not good at, that game design aspect for the scenarios and things. However, some of them just don't sound like. So if you're playing a skirmish game and you're going to have like 5 or 6, or maybe 10, a war band or whatever, versus another 10, 5, 10, 15, 20 figures, that's interesting. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and talk about, like, I'm going to use Shelob as an example. And like the Shelob, I'm like, oh my God, yes, yes, give me the Shelob model. I want a giant spider, and I want to put Sam and Frodo against this giant spider. That's going to be amazing. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, when you're playing 10 or 15, you're like, I'll move these guys over here and I'll shoot and do this. But if you just have one figure versus 2 figures, that doesn't seem like that much fun to me for this style of like a skirmish war game. I mean, you could make an amazing, board game where you're playing different cards and moving, but like this seems like you're kind of losing a lot of that move. I mean, you're like, I move my move Shelob here. Not a lot of decisions there. So a lot of stuff is going to fall under that. Okay, so building cinematic moments. Okay, so yeah, sometimes like, and then because I'm only playing alone. I want to also caveat this by saying that I really love to play. Like, I like to buy official stuff. I don't like go and buy like 3D printed stuff or different. I like to play with the stuff that's actually released, and I like to purchase that. I like to support the companies and things. So I have spent a lot of money on this game, and I'm going to be spending more this is my plan here to kind of like look into how I'm going to guide my purchases and my journey into the Middle Earth. But because I'm going to be playing alone in some of these scenarios, I think I'm going to maybe, and I'll get into this a little more, but I might end up doing a little more proxying than I might normally, which is 0, I guess, normally. But I think, because of some of these scenarios, like I'm not going to buy, and I'll get into, we'll get right into the first one here and I'll explain that. So in general, I don't like to proxy things or buy like third party stuff or whatever. I like to get the official stuff. That's just my own personal preference, not against anybody that likes to do that. Okay, so that's a long preamble here. Second half, we're going to run through, and I'm going to go through and look at the events in the Lord of the Rings in the Third Age here. So let's start out. Now, right off the bat, we're going to go into the prologue. This is films only, so this isn't in the books. This is, just a cinematic moment in the movies. And since I'm going for visuals, that's kind of a cool thing. And that is the Last Alliance. Okay, so in the Last Alliance, we have Elendil, and you have Gil-galad, and it's like my memory's going here. Gil-galad and Elendil, and they're going against. They've got elves and they've got men, and they're going against Sauron and his orcsies. So not a lot there, right? Because there's a lot there. I said, I love the image of Sauron. I want his figure so badly. I just want to own Sauron. That's amazing, right? And having some orcs and things. But most of that, the opposing army, the good army, is going to be elves. And in the Third Age, the elves are non-existent. They're not doing anything, really. I mean, they do show up in the films. I'm not putting elves in Helm Deep. That's my personal thing. I'm not going to do it. So they really don't show up and do too much. Okay, so it's kind of a waste for me to buy elves just for this Last Alliance battle. So, and then, I could put Minas Tirith soldiers in or whatever, but I think for now, that's going to be one I skip. So I'm not going to do that one, although that would be very, very cool to see. But maybe down the road. Okay, so let's go into the Fellowship segment. Now, in the Quest of the Ring Bearer book, as I was kind of talking about, they have some scenarios for these events leading up, when the hobbits are leaving the Shire. But they sound very like, like move this guy here. The Ringwraiths are looking for Frodo, and it doesn't sound like it sounds like too much of a departure from the actual game. And honestly, like the whole knife in the dark thing, the hobbits running away from the Ringwraiths is great as a story, but I don't think it's going to work that well as a gameplay thing. And of course, Gildor and Glorian is coaches them and discusses things with them, but that's a scene that I don't need that. I don't need to play that out, I guess. I mean, if it was like a well-designed board game, perhaps then I might, but in terms of like a skirmishing game, I don't think that's something I'm going to pass. Then one of my favorite scenes that is not included in the films is going through the old forest, and then and the trees are they're very angry, and you've got Old Man Willow, and the four hobbits are basically set upon by the trees and Old Man Willow, and they're only saved by Tom Bombadil, who you can buy his figure. So he's available in the game. At this point, this is going to go on my list. I'm going to start my list here, and this is for later, which is going to be Tom Bombadil. I'll try him later, and then trees. And they don't have any rules for trees. I don't believe. I think I looked through and I haven't seen anything for trees. Okay, so maybe later something will come along there. Okay. But then we have the Barrow Downs, and that's where the four hobbits, and this is not in the film either, they end up getting into the downs, and there's wights, and they fight wights. Well, this is the only scene in any of in the Lord of the Rings, in the Third Age here in this book, in these three books, that wights appear, in these Barrow wights. You can't buy official ones for this, but this is one where I'm going to proxy in another GW product. So let's talk about, I'm going to step back again, and I'm going to say, ultimately, I'm doing the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, okay? Because that is that's going to be the best. I want my Mumax, I want my Theoden's Charge, okay? I want the Witch King of Angmar. So anything that's going to be at that battle, I want to buy, because that's my ultimate goal. So they have the Army of the Dead. Now, the Army of the Dead in the books does not go to the Pelennor Fields. They go and they fight in Umbar, and that's what allows them to stop the Umbar pirates and stuff from going up the coast. So more of a film thing that the Army of the Dead is there. But I do want to go towards the visuals of that, and that's something that I think would be kind of fun to have in that battle. So the Army of the Dead, they are specters, they are ghosts, and I think they would work quite well as a proxy in. So I think I can do hobbits and Tom Bombadil versus, the Barrow Down wights. So I'm going to put the Army of the Dead. Okay, and this is, my handwriting is terrible. Next up, we got, skip a little bit to Weathertop. Of course, there's the 9 Riders. I gotta have the 9 Riders, and I can build Weathertop. That would be really, really cool. I should also mention, obviously, that I have to get the Fellowship, because they're integral in so many scenes. It's 9 figures, it's 1 box. I think it's something like 40 or 50, 40 bucks, I think, I can't remember. But it's, you're going to use all those characters in a variety of things. The Fellowship is going on the list. So in this scene, we'll get Aragorn. Now, in the books, you've got Glorfindel in here. In the films, you have Arwen. I'm going to have the proxy in somebody, or just do the 4 hobbits and Aragorn. See how it goes. Maybe find an elf from a different game. But the Fellowship is next on the list there. And the 9 Riders. Next, we have, like I said, Flight to the Ford with Glorfindel. And then we have one of my favorite parts in the book, and this is not in the films, but on the way to Caraharajas, we must take the path of Caraharajas. I can't even say it. They fight a bunch of wargs. There's a whole bunch of wolves, and they have this big battle, and Gandalf does what he almost never does in any of the books, really, is to use magic. He very rarely uses it, and this time he really uses some magic. And they fight a bunch of these wargs, and Legolas shoots and kills the warg chief. Now, they do have rules for the wargs. They have an entry in the army list, so I could build an army of wargs and use the Fellowship and go against them. And the wargs, I think, are like 35 bucks, and they're going on my list. Now, I don't prefer the way the wargs look in... I could just do wolves. I might do a proxy for wolves. Please don't make fun of my handwriting. They have, so, again, I'm only going to really be using them for this. I know there's some warg riders and things like that, but yeah, I like the wargs. I like this scene, and they do have rules for the wargs, so I think you could make a skirmish battle of this, and that would be very cool. Next up, we have the Pass of Caraharaja. I don't know why I can't say that. Caraharaja. I can't say it. I can spell it. Now, this is they are going against the weather, and in the films, Saruman is pressing his will, but that doesn't really make for a good skirmish game, so out of that. Next up, we got Watcher in the Water, which is the same thing as the Sheila problem I discussed earlier. I would love to own the Watcher in the Water and have some battles and things, but I think one monster versus a bunch of other figures isn't that compelling for a skirmish style of game, so I'm going to skip that. Then we are, going to the Tomb of Balin, which I can use some of my Morannon orcs or my Mordor orcs. They can kind of like fill in these other spots. But I do need a troll, a Moria troll, to really sell that part of it. But I think I'm going to wait on that. This is something I told myself earlier. So we're going to do Moria troll. I'm not going to go buying a bunch of Moria orcs because this is really only a scene that you see them. In the next segment, they're going to fight the Balrog, which would be amazing. But I'm going to like put that down the pike a little bit. Buy the Balrog and maybe some Moria, or maybe a box of Moria orcs, but not just yet because I'm trying to. It doesn't sound like I'm trying to keep things lighter, but I gotta cut the fat somewhere. So I'm gonna put Balrog and goblins is more what they are, goblins. Okay. All right. Then we've got the jumps all the way to the Breaking of the Fellowship. Now, the nice thing about the Breaking of the Fellowship is that I've got the Fellowship. And I've got Uruk-hai in my battle host box. So I already have everything I need to make this battle, except for one thing, which is Lurtz, which I love the way he looks in the films. He looks amazing. However, he's going to go over here in this little spot because Lurtz is like out of print. And he's like, I could only find one of them, and he was on Noble Knight Games, and he was like $50 at least. And then of shipping and stuff, and that's just too much for it's like a 2-figure pack. So I'm gonna hold off on Lurtz, and maybe he'll kind of make a new appearance. Maybe they'll reprint him or something. But he's somebody I want as part of this, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to get him unless it's a big price. So, but obviously the Breaking of the Fellowship, one of my favorite parts in one of my favorite battles of all time, my favorite fight scenes in any movie. So I really love to be able to reenact that. And I think the Uruk-hai versus the Fellowship would be a very fun battle, and they do have a scenario for that in the in one of the 2 books I have, probably in the Armies of Middle-earth. Next up, we have the 3 Hunters versus the Uruks, and again, we have all of what we need for that. We've got the Uruks, we've got the the Fellowship, or the 3 Hunters, so that's perfect. We could put them mounted, but I don't. We're not going to do. Well, I'm not going to buy them mounted just for that purpose. You can buy specific ones as them as the 300s, but I don't need to. I've got the figures I need to do that, so that's really good. Then the next thing we've got is Helm's Deep Siege, but I don't think sieges are really fun. I'd love to do like a battle of that and actually build Helm's Deep. I've got a lot of stuff, molds and things where I think that is be a very attainable goal. But I think that's going to have to come down the pike. I would have to get some berserkers maybe, and I've got everything else I need except for the setting. I'm not putting elves there, so I could build some ladders and things like that, and get maybe some of those ballistas and things. But if I did it, I would have to have the broken wall, and I probably could do that quite easily actually. Build the broken wall out. And just have that be, honestly, that would take almost no time at all to build 2 broken walls, have like a field, and then have the forces sort of meeting when the wall is breached. And again, no elves. There is a scenario that includes elves, which like in the Armies of Middle-earth book. But in general, a siege I don't think is very fun. Like, here's all my guys on the walls, they're shooting you, you're coming out. I don't see it much. I think the moving around is more interesting to me. So that's Helm's Deep. And then, of course, other elements of the battle, like, in the books, they're fighting in different areas and things. And Elfhelm actually comes in with the relief army with Gandalf. And then, of course, the Gandalf has talked to Treebeard and brought the horns in the trees. And that would be kind of cool, to like push them back into the trees. Just make so. There's some interesting things there, but that's a big project, and I think I'm going to build 2 Helm's Deep. Okay, next we've got March of the Ents. Okay, now this is incredible. I would love to do the March of the Ents. I have the Uruk-hai. They're so useful, these Uruk-hai, because like you get enough of them in that box. The box comes with 44 warriors. That's pretty good. So there's a lot of Uruk-hai there to spread out. So it's really useful. But the Ents are like $50 a pop. I think in the scenario they want you to use 3 Ents, Quick Beam, and Treebeard. Now Quick Beam and Treebeard, Quick Beam is like $90. Treebeard is like as like $70, I think, and then the other 3 Ents would be $50 a pop. So it's $100. That's like $500 just for Ents. So I'm not going to do that. However, I cannot not get Treebeard, and this is sort of nonsensical, but I'm going to buy Treebeard just to put him together and hold him close. Love that Treebeard. So I'm going to buy him, even if doesn't really make sense. If I want to just do like a mixed skirmish or something, it'd be kind of fun to take him. And in the future, I'm going to get Ents. I should have planned better. This is not a planning way of doing things. Next up, we've got Gollum, and taking him into, we have Emyn which is versus Gollum, which is the same problem as you got with Shelob, and the same problem you got with Watcher in the Water. That's not a fun battle, 2 versus 1. Although I do need Gollum, I think, for some of these scenarios and things, and as a character, and I think that would be a great idea. Now, ideally, I'd like to buy the Gollum for The Hobbit, which has Gollum and Bilbo, because then we get Bilbo's figure. But I think that's out of print at the moment, or just not available. So I might have to go with a different option if I want to get Gollum. But he's one of the central characters. I feel like I should get him, so I'm going to put him on my list. Next up, we got the Dead Marshes. Now, this is another one that is great because this Army of the Dead is so perfect. They're spirits. I can easily proxy them in. And this is a way where I have Gollum, Sam and Frodo, and they can kind of skirmish with the Army of the Dead a little bit, with the spirits, in which case this time they'll be represented by the Army of the Dead instead. So that's pretty good. Now into Ithilien, I have this is going to be two Mumoks, a bunch of Easterlings, and and then you've got the Rangers, Faramir's company, fighting them, and off the sidelines you've got Gollum and the potatoes and Frodo and Sam. So it's pretty expensive to buy these Mumoks. The official scenario calls for 2, but because my ultimate goal is to do the Battle of the Fields, and I have some of these Rangers that came in the Battle of Osgiliath box set, so I'm definitely going to get a Mumok because of the Pelennor Fields, and I already have those Rangers. Now the scenario itself in the book says, hey, you got to have 2 and you got to have more of these Rangers, but I'm not going to use the Rangers really a lot, and 2 Mumoks is very expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, if I want to play this and have this inspire, I'm not going to use the official scenario, and I'm not going to use the exact numbers and stuff, but I am just going to maybe just do a skirmish using those forces and having them just sort of be inspired, just a variant, so it gives me the feeling of that scenario, but not necessarily the exact scenario. So we're going to put Mumok on the list here, and I already have the other stuff from the box set. Okay, next up we've got the Black Gate. Okay, again, not really enough here to make a scenario out of. The Lord of the Rings, the card game, kind of had they made a kind of a different thing out of it where you're fighting these Easterlings and stuff, and I'm sure there's some kind of scenario out there for this, but not enough meat on the bone in this for me personally. Then you got Shelob. Again, I described that problem a lot, so we're going to skip Shelob. I really would love to do that, and then the battle in Cirith Ungol. And this is I could do orcs versus orcs. I could absolutely do that. One of the most interesting parts of that is the Watchers. They have a very big part in the book where they're just like these menacing things that you can't get by and stuff. I really love that. I don't know how to really make that happen, and I'm not that excited about playing orcs versus orcs in sort of something that happens off camera or off script or whatever after the battle with Shelob. So I'm going to skip that. So it's not that exciting to me. I'm not going to put it on my later list at all either. Okay, now moving on to Return of the King. Return of the King, we've got you got the Drúdain Forest, which in the books is this incredible part. Now I'll just diverge for a little bit if you don't know this, but it's really kind of cool because Sauron's not stupid. He knows that Rohan could come, and he doesn't want them to. He wants them to arrive too late to the Pelennor Fields, and then they can dispatch them. Just break them down piecemeal, right? Instead of having to fight all of them at once. And so what he does is he leaves a blocking army so that Rohan will have to fight Sauron's army, and then by that point, Minas Tirith would have fallen, and then that army that's there can come around and then reinforce, and then they'll just wipe out Rohan, and Sauron will have a complete victory. So what's really amazing is that these the Druidine. Sorry, I'm getting old. I had to look up Gonberry Gon. I can't believe I forgot that name. But Gonberry Gon is their leader, and basically they're leading. They have secret paths and things through this area, and they hate orcs, and they basically take. And it's risky because they don't. The Rohan, this is like very. They don't want to be taken in this forest and killed, or led astray or whatever. So there's a great deal of trust, and so they go up to go like single file, this huge army going single file, but they basically go sneakily through the paths that the Druidane take them through, and they go around that blocking army, and then they're able to come upon the Pelennor Field sort of unexpected. So in the movies, it's sort of like, whoa, look, where'd you guys come from? But they would have known that. But what happens is that they pulled a sneaky, pulled a sneaky on you. So, but again, not enough meat on the bone for this story. And again, the Druidane, you could buy them, and but the problem is that they are not. They're hard to find, they're expensive, and I'm not going to do anything with them aside from this thing that's not even a real thing. So that's a whole lot of discussion to say. I'm skipping it. Next thing, Paths of the Dead. Done. I've already got the Army of my Dead on my list, and I've got my 3 hunters from the Fellowship. Now, I believe in the book as well, you have Elladan and Elrohir going along, the brothers, Elrond's sons, and a few other people, and some of the Dunedain. But I don't really need to do that. Maybe I can proxy in a couple of elves or something. But yeah, that's kind of like, again, I'm not buying a whole bunch of elves because I'm not going to be able to use them for any really other scenario. Then we get to the Pirates of Unbar. I'm not going to buy all these pirates just for this scenario, so they're not going on the list either, and this is where the Army of the Dead would actually fight, so we're going to skip them. Then we're on to Battle of Osgiliath. Now that I have everything I need, really, I can just approximate that conflict, because I'm not going to buy more of the Rangers, and I do have, obviously, the Orcs and things, so that's going to work. And of course, now we're going into the Siege of Gondor. Again, Siege is not really that much fun, and it's going to use essentially the same pieces that we are in the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which is going to be Easterlings. Is not on my list. I gotta have me some Easterlings. And then I'm going to need a Fell Beast, of course. Okay, I'm going to need Theoden King. And I think that's everybody that I need for that, because I've got the Army of the Dead, I've got my boxes I've already got Orcs, and I've already got I've got Rohan, I've got Minas Tirith from the battle box, I've got Gandalf the White in there, and I've got everybody I need for that. So except for Theoden King, and Éowyn. Éowyn does not come in that box, and we need her to kill the Witch King along with Merry. Interesting enough, if you haven't read the books either, one of the cool things about that whole scenario is, I mentioned the Barrow Downs, the Barrow Wights that the 4 hobbits fight, and they get saved by Tom Bombadil. But they're given these daggers, and the daggers are daggers of Westerness, and they're made specifically to fight Angmar, which is where the Witch King comes from, and that they destroyed Arnor in the north, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Merry has one of these daggers, and so what happens is not just like she's like, hey, I'm a woman and I stab you and now you're dead, Witch King of Angmar. But what happens is that Merry is obviously terrified. It's like you can't even look at this guy, the Witch King. Is terrifying. So Merry is like and Merry is, and this is one of the themes of the books, obviously, just completely beneath the Witch King. Even like he's like, you're just a dirt, you're a worm, I don't know, even to worry about you. So Merry sort of like slides around, gets behind him, and he stabs the Witch King in the back, and just as Éowyn goes to strike. And what this does, this dagger separates the link that links the Witch King's spirit to the world, and it like severs that just enough so that when Éowyn strikes the Witch King, that's what kills him. So it's sort of like a team-up move. And of course, the prophecy coming true of this, of the no man can kill me. Really, really fantastic moment. But it's one of the things that they kind of, I think, one thing they little miss, and in the actual films over the books. Okay, so that's the Siege of Gondor. Now we move on to the and Grond. I would love to make a Grond, but yeah, let's write Grond down. Maybe I'll make a Grond at some point. Okay, then we got the Black Gate opens, and this is I have all the things I need for that conflict, as we've discussed already, with the exception of eagles, which I would love to get some eagles in this game. I'm going to have to buy eagles at some point, but I'm going to put them down here as a later purchase. Okay, and then we've got my favorite part of the whole books, really, honestly, it's just so great. It's the Scouring of the Shire. Now, I'm okay with them skipping it in the movies. It made complete sense the way they did it. But it just gives you something to love about the films and something to love about the books. But the Scouring of the Shire has the 4 hobbits, a bunch of hobbits, and the ruffians, okay? But I really would love to play this, to play out these battles. And I may at some point, but I'm not going to buy, like $100 worth of ruffians just to play like a couple of Shire battles. I do actually have some things I can use to make hobbit doors and things like that. So I'm kind of excited about building like a hobbit board, but I think that's going to be down the road. I could get the 4 hobbits mounted, which I think I would need for this, as well as some hobbit boxes and stuff. But that's probably a couple $100 just to play, a couple of scenarios. I know they have a Scouring the Shire book, which I think has a whole load of scenarios and things in there. But I think I've got a lot to chew on now, so I think the Scouring of the Shire I'm just gonna write Scouring, since I'm running out of room and no one can read what I'm writing anyway. Yeah. And of course I skipped over. There's something that happens in between those two events, and that is the Gorgoroth Plains. Sam and Frodo crossing them again, 2 versus a bunch of orcs. It doesn't really seem to make a great skirmish battle. And then at the Crack of Doom, again with that Sheila problem where you've got Gollum versus Sam and Frodo, and sort of Frodo versus Sam and Gollum. So I don't think it really probably works that great either. So I'm going to skip that as well. Okay, so here's my list of things to buy. Very expensive. Don't tell my wife. And these are the things I'm going to kind of work on later. So that's going to kind of guide it's going to guide my hand in this project. So I'm very excited to get started finding things and everything. And in fact, I did a little cheat. I was having in England. My wife and I took a little vacation. We were very fortunate. We have every few years we build up a lot of points on our credit cards, and we get these essentially free trips, which is fantastic. But while I was over there, I saw they had a Warhammer store, and I was thinking about this, and so I went in there just to check it out. They had a ton of Forge World stuff, and if you don't know, Forge World is sort of their high-end online only type thing, but you can buy most everything online anyway, so it's not really that exciting. But I thought I should go check and see if they had anything. The store was a little lackluster. I thought being in a major city like London, it would be like super exciting, but it was fine, but it just wasn't. I just thought there'd be more displays and more exciting things. In Chicago, I've been up to Chicago, and they have like a space marine outside. He's like a life-size space marine like statue. It's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, I did manage to find they had a few Lord of the Rings things. I did buy the Fellowship because I knew I was going to need them, and I bought the there was some King of the Dead, like the King, and a couple of heralds. So I bought that, and I needed this. I had to have this. Shagrat, he's the orc. I love orcs. I absolutely cannot get enough. I love them so much. And this is probably my favorite orc. He's in the Return of the King. Gothmog is on, he's like, fear, the city is rank with it. Let us ease their suffering. Release the prisoners. And essentially what they do is they catapult all the heads that they've killed from the Osgiliath people into the city. And I love that scene, first of all, but in that scene, his Shagrat is there, and he's like, catapults! He says it like that, but he has like a skull for a hat, and he's got like a big scar across. He's the best. I love him. And I was like, I gotta own this guy and paint up his little skull and stuff. So they had him for sale, so I bought him. So I did buy a couple of things as well for this. But yeah, this is gonna be my list. I'm gonna have to look. It is weird because I have done some looking at this already, and I noticed that I'll go on to Warhammer's website and they'll be out of something, and then I'll go back and they'll be in stock on it, and then something else I was looking at will be now out of stock. So stock seems to fluctuate quite a bit. I've looked at Noble Knight. I did meet someone that works for Noble Knight somewhat recently. Very, very friendly, nice person. So I was kind of oh, that's kind of cool. And I've used them in the past for a couple of things, and they have some stuff. And and of course eBay is another spot, but seems a little, that's a whole other story, but But I'm going to look into this. Anyway, so this is by far the way longest Whachacha's Wargaming journey I've had. But hopefully, I guess the point of doing this is that, like, if you're also thinking about it, like, and maybe you're like, you're nuts for doing solo things, but, you know, maybe if you're thinking about it as well, this helps you to consider things and that maybe, you know, I thought of, and if you've thought of something, and please put it down below. But yeah, so I can't wait to get started getting some of these models put together. I'm going to work on some basing for them as well. I've never really based before because I always like to put clear bases on things, and because I like it when, like, if somebody's outside, you can see the outside underneath their base, and if they're inside, you can see the inside. I don't like people bringing trees inside, but I think all of the battles really take place outside. Osgiliath is an indoor location, and the Siege of Gondor is in Minas Tirith, but I don't think those, like 90% of the battles outside, so I feel like I can base them with grass and some dirt and things like that. So I'm going to kind of look forward to doing that. It's going to be a lot because there's a lot of minis and stuff, but yeah. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you on the next episode.